The problem is we do not have enough people that are emotionally intelligent, and that is why we have such an unstable society. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when I came to India specifically, I was brutally honest. And it was a situation whereby my friends themselves knew never ask Peter to come and sign your attendance for you. Along the way, some of my friends spoke to me and were like, with the way you are, as good as it might be, you're not gonna get far with people. I don't really understand why people try to separate Christianity from business. It makes absolutely no sense to me. If you read the creation accounts, God has created the land, the flowers, the animals, etc., etc. Then he creates man. Then he says, go and tend to the garden. First job. Notice the job was given before the female came in, which means that you're supposed to have something doing. And chances are it's going to be business. Most of the trophies or awards I've gotten, you're not going to see them anywhere in my room. They're not physically there. Every single one of them, I've always placed them under my bed. And the reason for that is that it's a representation of what I'm doing in my mind, which is you have not yet achieved anything. You want to be here. And despite all these little wins you're getting here and there, you're not yet where you're supposed to be.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Headlines. I'm your host, L with an E and an L, not just an L, but with an E and an L. So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about life's realities and dilemmas. And we also have a special guest. But first, I'm going to ask our host, Teddy, to introduce our guest.
Yep, I'm excited.
You're very excited.
At the same time, I feel tiny. Introduce this great man.
Don't worry, you'll also be great.
I feel like explode. But anyway, our guest is a legal scholar and academic with a BA, LLB, and LLM. Currently is pursuing his PhD. He serves as a visiting assistant professor at Peru Institute of Law, combining teaching with an active academic career. He has worked as an editor and authored a number of articles on legal and ethical issues, showcasing his analytical depth. Beyond academics, he has excelled in public speaking, debates, and moot court competitions, earning recognition for his advocacy and oratory skills. His well-rounded profile reflects a commitment to scholarship, teaching, and meaningful public engagement. Elle, please help me welcome Mr. Peter Yurriens Ezenduka.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
We're also great to have you.
I'm excited.
I feel tiny as well.
I'm sure.
This is going to be a wonderful experience. Anyway, so our first question is, how can society better accommodate people with disabilities and accessibility challenges, especially in public spaces and workplaces?
Okay, I think that's gonna be a rather tough argument, conversation to have. Mainly because the world is becoming a bit more selfish as we progress, and it's being less inclusive. And okay, fine. Let's talk about mental health, for example, because it's being recognized as a disability. And I think the main problem we have in the world is that there's a typical imbalance. An imbalance in the sense that it's either we're extremely on this side or extremely on that side, right? If we want to be exclusive, we're taking it to the extreme. If we don't want to be inclusive, we're also taking that to the extreme. Ethically balancing it now, it's the same thing we have with law. We do have laws, but then the issue now becomes, how are we going to apply the laws? Because at the end of the day, it's the people that do have to follow the laws, right? And a lot of people don't really care about the next person. So as a society, how are we supposed to balance those things? I don't have an answer. And the reason I don't have an answer is because, human beings by nature, as we have currently seen, are selfish.
But you say that the world is becoming selfish, right? But isn't it necessary to be selfish? Because I believe being selfish is also a form of self-care.
Okay. There's a very big difference between self-confidence and pride, but the two are very easily mixed together. So, yes, selfishness can be a form of self-care, but the issue is to what extent? I mean, if you're familiar with the process of baking or cooking, you'd understand that the moment you put too much of a certain ingredient, you're misplacing something, you're creating an imbalance. Now, the issue is a lot of people do not understand where something starts and where it ends. If you don't understand these two phases, you're never going to understand how to balance it out. So, yes, selfishness can be self-care, but then at the same time I'm being selfish, do I still have consideration for the next human being? And I mean, if we're all going to be selfish, how are we going to take care of everybody else? Because, I mean, nobody's an island, neither one of us here or outside in the bigger world. So, yeah.
Okay, so Teddy, is Peter saying that there's no way to accommodate people with disabilities in the society?
From what I've picked, he's just basically saying, he was saying that no man is an island, right? And for you to make a world a better place, it has to start with you. So how you want those people to be treated, you have to start and treat them that way, because you can't expect someone else to treat them in a nice way if you yourself can't. So how do you treat people with disabilities?
How am I supposed to answer this now?
Okay, so simply what I'm trying to say, I can summarize it here. We need better people, better human beings. And I'll take, for example, my current research area, which is on the right to die. And the right to die has been something that we kind of like, when it was first enacted, it was supposed to be something that is supposed to be merciful killing, right? So if it's like you're terminally sick or you're about to die, something of that nature, right? But now we have it being expanded. And the expansion is dangerous because now you have children being included. Now you have people with acute depression being included. But these things are not the reason why it was enacted in the first place, right? So now that we're expanding without knowing where to end it, this is where the issue is coming, right? So at the end of the day, human beings, we're all going to be selfish. That's a given, but there is a limit to how much. Because, for example, you can give me a whole jug of water. I'm not going to drink the whole jug. I'm going to take a cup and I'm going to drink what is enough for me. Selfishness, basically, self-care has to do with me satisfying my own interests, okay? So I've taken the cup and I'm drinking enough for what I need. The moment I start going overboard, then there's a problem that is created. For example, if you drink too much water, you can also cause an imbalance inside your body. It might not be physically apparent, but you do need salt within your body. The moment you drink too much water, the salt gets imbalanced and can cause a danger to you. So the question comes down to limits when it comes to selfishness. So if we want to include disabled people in society, we are really going to have to like build up and get to a place where we kind of like understand where these limits are for us as individuals before we start talking about the rest. Because at the end of the day, if you lack respect for yourself or you lack love for yourself, there's no way you can give it to another person. So if you want to include these people, it must first of all come from a place of understanding.
Okay, so the world needs better people, less selfish people, very loving people, very kind-hearted people.
But I have a question for him though. Two actually. Not
Yeah.
one. You say that people nowadays recognize mental health as a disability. Do you recognize that as a disability?
I mean, it can be. There's this whole concept of emotional numbness also known as emotional blunting. Okay. And this is kind of like when a person kind of like starts disassociating themselves from life. In other words, their feelings have gone mute. Now, a disability is essentially when something's normal processing is not going the way it's supposed to. So the moment we mute our emotions, that is not our modus operandi. This is not the way we're supposed to function as human beings, right? So disabilities, I mean, yeah, you can include mental health into that. But then the problem with it is that a lot of people are not coming to a place of understanding as to how to treat it. Because mental health can be treated in several ways, but a lot of people don't actually know how to go about it, which creates the imbalance I've been speaking of.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. I have a question for you. So. But I'll come back to the mental health one. First, let me ask you this one.
I bet.
Why do conversations about menstrual health and menopause still carry stigma, and how can we foster open discussions about these natural processes? We picked this question because as women we want a man's perspective.
I think that's the first time I've actually come across a situation whereby you want a man's perspective on. I don't know if I should speak on it because I'm kind of avoiding getting canceled type situation.
But you should.
Why does it carry a stigma?
It's a natural process.
Lack of knowledge. I'll simply say that. Because at the end of the day, most of us males, we have sisters. Most of us. I'm not gonna say everybody because chances are some people are just brothers or they're the single, only child. But I actually don't know. Like it's actually built up from culture and religious points of views. Because I mean, in the old days, you'd find that a lot of religions, not even in the old days, up till now, some religions, the moment you're menstruating, you're not allowed to enter into a temple or things of that nature. And the problem is a lot of people are religiously driven, but blind with it. And the reason why I'm saying they're blind with it is because religion comes with context. Okay, I'll give you for example. For the longest time in my life, I believed women were not supposed to wear trousers. Okay.
Okay.
Hold on. Okay. For the longest period of my life, I actually believed that. And it came from a religious perspective. And this was before I actually took a study into what is what. And most of this was kind of like based on the Old Testament, where it says a man should not wear what a woman wears, and a woman should not wear what a man wears. But the thing is, I didn't understand the context. And the context of that was the people of Israel were going through a particular land, and in that land, the women could go to war, right? So they would put on armor, and armor was considered kind of like men's garment because it was supposed to be the man that would go to war. Now, passing through this, God is saying to them, don't pick up this practice. And if you notice, Israel, throughout their history, it was only men serving in the military. This thing of females joining the military was like a very recent type of thing, right? So in other words, in context, do not take up the responsibility of the man here. So the clothes there was kind of like symbolism being used. But the thing is, some people just read according to what is written, but you're not taking the time to understand. For example, it's written in English, but have you gone to look at it in the Greek version or in the Hebrew version? Have you studied the root words to understand exactly what it's saying? And have you also taken a study into the context of the time? There was a reasoning behind it. For example, God says, do not eat pigs, right? I mean, we all enjoy pork here or
It's really
bacon.
nice. Bacon, breakfast.
But then there was a reasoning behind why God said that. Because if you understand the makeup of a pig, it's filled with filth. And it takes a certain temperature for those filth to be kind of like flushed away, per se. So God was essentially trying to protect his people from getting sick. Context. It wasn't that, so it was kind of like at this point in time, with the materials and things you have now, you do not yet have the knowledge necessary for you to actually handle this. So a blessing coming to you in the wrong season, it's always going to be disastrous to you, regardless of what the intention of it was. So there was a reason why certain things were kind of like left in the past, and that was because knowledge came in. This is why I'm saying it's based on lack of knowledge. Because at the end of the day, yes, they said avoid women during the menstrual period, they are unclean, etc., etc. But then if you go to the New Testament, you see that there's a switch whereby according to his blood, everything is washed away and there's nothing or no one unclean. So at the end of the day, we now have people that are still basing their knowledge on the past instead of being in the present. That creates this issues of, I still feel this is disgusting or whatnot. I mean, what are you going to do?
So basically what you're saying is we're supposed to educate people more about it?
Education. A lot of people are going to take education as, I want to read a book. And after I read this book, I'm going to be educated on the subject matter. That is bullcrap. And the reason why I'm saying that is because education is based on critical thinking, your ability to think. Because if you look at India's history, you had gurus and then their students, right? But then you notice something unique here. When the gurus teach the students study what their gurus have said, develop it, bring up new perspectives on it, and pass it on. Then the next person takes it up, studies it, find the loophole, add the improvements, and passes it on. That's the whole concept of being educated. Being educated is basically your ability to think. Because I mean, you can say you have a BBA, and then I take it to the market and you can't do anything with it. But I go to someone in the village that has been in the market area and give them the same opportunity, and they excel way past you. The reason behind that is because they've been educated in the art. You just got the theoretical aspect. So for me, it comes down to the whole thing of, in as much as you want to speak about it, but the people you're speaking to or trying to educate, do they have the ability to think? That becomes the issue. Do they actually have the ability to think, to process information? Because I think a lot of the misunderstandings we have in society actually boils down to this very simple thing. There are people that just do not know how to think. So yeah, I mean, as a kid, one of the subjects we had was critical thinking, and my dad basically hammered that into my head that you need to excel in this subject. So I think that kind of like created like a building block for me. So whenever you're giving me a situation, I can think about it in various different manners and in various different perspectives to understand the ins and outs of it before I can actually speak up. So by the time I'm speaking up on a particular subject matter, best believe I already know what I'm talking about. If it's something I don't really understand, I'd rather keep quiet.
Okay. Mentally?
So concerning this issue, how would you advise or deal with hot-headed, stubborn men who still can't get past the stage of stigma towards women and menstrual health?
There's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do about that because, you have males. I'm not saying man. There's a reason I'm saying
males.
You have males who believe they're past the age of 18 and they have a male genital and they have two balls with it and they assume I'm a man. Okay. But then the issue is a lot of people, and I mean into your 40s, into your 50s, that never actually got into manhood. Because if you actually look, I like kind of like referring to the Bible because it's something like I've really studied. If you actually look at the cultural context of Israel, you're never really considered a man until you're about 30. That's part of the reason why you notice that Jesus Christ began at 30. There was actually no other reason because before that, they're still kind of like, oh, you're still beginning in life. You don't have the necessary experience rather.
Experience.
You don't have the necessary experience to actually conduct yourself as a man. So they wait until you're around 30. Then they're like, okay, there's a possibility. At least your childishness should have been beaten out of you by now. But unfortunately, I can't say I can educate another man, because if you had the ability to think, if you have a mother, if you have a sister, and you've seen what they go through during those periods, and I mean, they've already stipulated very clearly that it's just as bad as a heart attack and whatnot. So if you get kicked in the balls, you can understand partially what that pain is going to be like. But so for me to educate another man on understanding that, oh, this is a natural process and not something we should be against, or don't feel icked out by it, it's not really something I can do. I mean, if you have a phobia towards blood, that's a different issue, right? But if you're a person that has normal thinking processes and you still, I can't do anything about that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So let me hear anyone under 30 claiming is a man. You're a boy.
Okay, that's not what I'm saying, though. I'm saying
That's what I think. That's what I think. Anyone under 30.
That's that.
He's
Okay,
a boy.
no. See, some people do grow up ahead of their time. Because I mean, there's a reason why they tell you that females kind of like develop much faster than their male counterparts. And the reasoning behind that mostly, I think, is because they kind of like get to experience the negatives of life a bit faster and a bit more head on. For men, there's kind of like a shelter that is covering them for a certain period of time, right? So it's easy for them to like kind of like bypass. But then at the same time, you will still find 17-year-olds, 15-year-olds that by the time you hear them speak, it's like you're listening to a 40, 50-year-old person, right? These things happen. But then this was kind of like a fail-safe. 30 was like a fail-safe because like we are assuming that by now you should have grown up. So there's that context again.
Okay. And what emotional toll do fertility struggles and miscarriages take on individuals and couples, and how can communities provide meaningful support?
This comes back to men. Okay. Fertility issues. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I was having a conversation with my students in the class, and I told them, if you're about to get married to someone, please go to the hospital and get tested. Because there's a minimum of about 7 different tests you're supposed to take before you get married. That includes mental illness, that includes hereditary like diseases, that includes fertility. Because a lot of the times that a woman is not able to come to full term, it's usually the men that are to blame. And the reasoning behind that is because scientifically speaking, some men are shooting blanks and they have no idea. Some men do not have complete, like a perfect, healthy, complete sperm, right? It's like, it's not complete, right? So now what happens is, because it's not complete, there is no way it's going to come to full term. And a lot of the times it's the men that have these things. And the reason they have these things are based on certain habits. This includes things like drinking, smoking, of which when you're comparing it, men do way more of that, which technically does damage you. Like putting your laptop on top on your laps and whatnot. All of these things are factors and they do damage people. So now when you come down to fertility and again, education, ability to actually understand, because a lot of people just assume that because you have the privilege, quote unquote, of being a man that you're perfect. Unfortunately, that is not the reality. Sometimes when you're beating up that woman, chances, and okay, even I'm sure you've come across this many cases, like there's so many cases of women that their husbands beat them up for not being fertile. Then the husband goes outside and gets someone else pregnant. And then a few years down the line, they find out that that kid is not theirs. So yeah, but you're beating up on someone else. And there's also this very huge resistance to going to get yourself tested, to figure out if the problem is coming from you. But the thing is, no matter how you want to twist it, if the problem is you, unless you've taken the steps to fix it, nothing is gonna change.
Okay, this goes back again to men. You know how, the woman, you know about chromosomes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the woman is XX.
Great minds think alike.
And the male is XY. Now we have situations whereby the woman continues giving birth to girls, right? Taking you back to the issue of low fertility in the man, what. Okay. Obviously, let's assume in this case the man knows that it's his fault, but his family members are just being told the wife. Now those family people are very educated,
I'll blame the man. One of the primary things that makes you a man is your ability to be a protector. And again, going back to the Bible, that's my favorite reference point. You're going to leave your mother and your father and cleave to your wife. So whatever your family has to say, that's them. Whatever issues they have, handle it at your house. If it's my wife that's having this issue, it's between me and her. You're not supposed to be involved in this. Don't interfere. Like any man that I see allowing family to, unless it's justified. But a lot of the times you're going to find a lot of men that never stop being mommy's boy, right? And because they never stop that, there's always the voice coming in from the outside. But as a man that is standing on his own too, you're expected, it's an expectation to be able to protect your wife. And that includes your own family members. It's not just from external attacks. It's attacks, period.
Okay. So guys, you know what Peter said? Can say guys? Males. Yeah, that's what Peter said. Since Peter has been telling us how he loves the Bible, he started the Bible. So we have a question for him.
Okay.
It's like this. Do you believe Christianity and business should remain separate? Or faith can play a role in ethical decision making in the corporate world?
The simple answer is no, they should not be separate.
Can you elaborate?
Okay. I'll go back to the Bible. Do you know the meaning of Eden?
The garden.
The beginning?
That's the name of the place. But what does the word Eden mean?
I've never researched about it.
One of the PhDs here.
This has nothing to do with PhDs. I mean, this is basic studying because, in the Bible it does write study to show yourself approved. So
I think I have to read my Bible with a different perspective now.
Okay, Eden basically means God's pleasure.
Okay.
So it's the garden of God's pleasure. Now, if you read the creation account, God has created the land, the flowers, the animals, etc., etc. Then he creates man. And again, this is another factor that makes you a man. Then he says, go and tend to the garden. First job. Notice the job was given before the female came in, right? Which means that you're supposed to have something doing. And chances are it's going to be business. And I don't really understand why people try to separate Christianity from business. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Unless, of course, you want to, cheat. Then it's appropriate for you to take it out. But then, if you read the Bible carefully, it also says, whatever it is you do, become more skilled at it. perfect your craft. For example, the person that wrote most of the New Testament, Paul, was a lawyer. And if you read his accounts very carefully, when he goes to the different cities, he tries to do his own thing. That is tent making. It's a business. It's not like he was creating a tent for himself, right? It's a business he's conducting. Now, in India, as we are here, how many times have you gone to a store, you're given a certain price, and then you sent an Indian to go to that same store, same product, and he came up with a different price? Okay. This is why I believe religion can mix with business. Remember when I spoke about the whole thing of selfishness? And this is a general assumption that foreigners are generally the cash cows of a country. It's a general assumption. But then this is where I now start having issues, because it's like now you've started creating differences between us. It's either skin color, it's either religion, it's either something. There's always something that comes up that creates that difference. But imagine a world where we were conducting business and we treated every person fairly, right? This is why I don't think we take out religion from it. Because I mean, if I was to place before you a Christian business and a secular business, which one are you? And they have the same products, same services. Which one are you generally going to be more inclined to go to? The reason you're going to be more inclined to go to the one that is Christian is because there's an expectation that you will follow the dictates or the principles of Christianity. Christianity has never said don't try to make a profit. You're expected to make a profit. I mean, that's the only way you can make progress. That's the only way you can create riches and whatnot. But there's a cap. There's a cap to it. It's called, unfair advantage, right? The moment you start placing your price above the natural thing it's supposed to be, that's why you have MRPs, right? Which is maximum retail price. In other words, do not go above this, okay? But why are we supposed to have MRPs on packets? I mean, if everybody was trying to be honest, we wouldn't have a need to have these things. So anybody that tells you that, you guys know Vusi, right? The South African, yeah? He's an amazing businessman. Like how many people do you know that can match his like business acumen? It makes that he's just simply phenomenal. But he's Christian.
So, I believe you're Christian, right? Okay. So, as a Christian, okay, let me use us as an example. You're a Christian in business, in business, and we are your fellow Christian people. We come to you for a certain product or something that you do, and you tell us a certain price. And then we tell you that is that how a Christian is supposed to price their things, right? And we try our very best to insult you and all that. That now causes you to feel like you're not being a Christian. Right? Yeah, you remember, right? How would you deal with that?
I'll treat it the same way I treat people that come to me and are like, don't judge. Because I mean, that verse, don't judge, you're not reading it in context, right? Because they'll be like, you're Christian, why are you judging? You're not supposed to do that. And I'm like, cool. Now tell me, did you read the complete passage to understand it? Have you read the New Testament to understand the context behind that? It says, do not make an unrighteous judgment. It has a context that is based on appearance, right? In other words, have you gone to the essence of it to be able to judge? Okay. It's the same way there are certain men of God, quote, that would say certain things. And the Bible is essentially a standard, okay? Then I look at this standard and what you're saying, it's not matching the standard you're speaking of. Okay, it's like not matching this particular standard. So then I question, if you're speaking from the mouth of God, if you're supposed to be God's mouthpiece, how is his word and your lips saying two different messages? It has to align at a certain place, and you're completely going. It's the same thing with this whole miracle money thing. I mean, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure, because it's like the whole miracle money. I understand the concept, but you're not reading it in context. When God does or has done miraculous things that defy the laws of nature, they were for a specific reason. It was never just randomly. It was never just because, oh, I'm a Christian. For example, there was a teleportation that happened in the Bible, if I'm not mistaken. Who was it? I think it was Timothy or so. I'm not completely sure. But there's someone that teleported. Was it? I think it's either Philip or Timothy. I've forgotten which one of them. But one of them teleported. But how many times do you see the Bible say he teleported? It was one. One time. Then you talk about Elijah. He's going to lock up the heavens for this amount of time. Who else has repeated it? Jesus Christ walked on water. Who else has done it? Now you see, there's context. It's there for a reason. God does not, okay. Coming back to the Old Testament, he says very clearly that my word shall not fall to the ground without being accomplished. And his word is above him, like his name, right? Nothing goes above it. Now, if you want to understand his name or his nature, go to Jesus Christ. He says, I am the word, right? So if he's the word, it means that God's word, nothing can go above it. It is better for the heavens and the earth to pass away than for his word to fail. Now, God has created laws of nature. What makes you think he wants to willingly go against it every single time? The lady that had a pot that was overflowing with oil and whatnot, wasn't it a very unique situation? It was. It was God now showing favor in a specific situation. And that's the problem. A lot of people try to replicate what God has done for someone else. Then you don't really understand God. God has a specific dealing for a specific person. It's never going to be the same experience for two different people. Right. So now, if you have this, and then I've understood that God's word is a standard and nothing can go above or beyond it. And then someone comes and says, oh, this is how things are, and the Bible is saying the opposite. Why am I listening to you? And people have this tendency of saying don't judge and things like, read it carefully. Essentially, it's you having a moral high ground. In other words, you're trying to display yourself, and this is an issue I have with a lot of Christians, where they try to kind of like give a moral superiority, whereby they try to make themselves seem perfect. And then from that place of perfection, speak down on you. This is where the whole thing of you have a plank in your own eye and you want to take a speck from someone else's eye. You have a greater sin in your life and you try to judge this person for his sin. If I'm telling you something is wrong, I'm not judging you. I'm trying to edify you. There's a difference between edification and just judgment. But people confuse the two. So then it comes to, okay, if now I've understood that judgment means I should not take that moral high ground, but I'm able to tell you, don't do this, right? And you go and do it and it has a very negative effect on you. I can be answerable to that. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes. So generally, if I'm telling you, don't dress a certain way, and then you go like, oh, don't judge. Oh, I'm not judging you. I know what's happening. Yeah, right. Like, for example, I had a friend of mine and I was speaking to her and I was like, okay. Actually, I'll talk about two friends. One of them was a very close friend of mine, Pinky. Most of you are going to know her. Yeah, Mildred, right? So a lot of people never really understood why me and her were close. Because back then, not my present version, but back then, I had a lot of people that would call me Father Abraham, or I'm very reserved, I'm the preacher, etc., etc. And then Pinky was like the direct opposite of whatever it was that they thought I was. But they never understood why we were close. And I told them very clearly, the reason why me and her are close is because I know her. A lot of you walk around with masks, but this person has literally let me know I know all her limits, what she can do and what she can't do. So the moment you come to me and say that she did this and this and this, I have a knowledge bank of her, and so I'm like, this doesn't match. It doesn't make sense. The second friend, she has a certain way of dressing, and we had a lot of fights concerning it. And then I told her, do you understand that when I'm trying to tell you this thing, I'm not trying to judge you, but I understand how my side of this human species think. Like this human spectrum, like there's a certain way my people, my gender specifically, thinks. And there's a message, and whether you like it or not, how you dress, it's always going to have an impact as to how you're going to be addressed. There's a reason why when you walk into the palace, there's a reason why, let's say the UK, for example, you're not going to walk up to Prince William or Kate Middleton and disrespect any one of them. Because the way they dress, there's a power that kind of like surrounds it. Their status is matching what they're wearing. You get it now? So it's like, if it's matching, there's a reason why it's matching. But then I understand that you are a smart woman. Like, you are great when it comes to doing business. And I'm saying this, she actually is absolutely great when it comes to doing business. And generally when she's at work, she dresses a certain way. And she's very well respected now. Okay, so the clients would respect her. But then I'm like, when you go outside and do the exact opposite of what you've been doing the whole time, it creates an imbalance. Now, this is where you now start seeing clients that were respectful once, then they see you outside, and then the next time they're seeing you, there's a little bit of disrespect that has been introduced with it.
Okay, thank you very much for wise words, wisdom. The wisdom from a PhD holder.
But I have a question though. You spoke about how your side of the speech is yes. Like they see you in a certain way of dressing, and that's where some of the disrespect comes from. Yeah. But then there's a certain time where you are dressed decently, but they try and approach you. When they do, you give them a cold shoulder. Indecent dressing, and they still treat you as if you're dressed indecently.
Yes,
so is this still a matter of dressing, or now it's just
we have in Nigeria, we have this saying, many are mad, few are roaming. Many are mentally unstable, but very few of them are inside the psychiatric hospital. Okay. And by this what I'm trying to say is, a reasonable man that has his thinking capacity at work, that has self-esteem, that has built up his image as a man. Do you think someone like Prince William, I'll take that as an example again, would walk up to you and after you give him a cold shoulder, he disrespects you?
No.
Why? Because this one had good training. There's something in his head. That's why they tell you that the loudest drums are empty on the inside. You get me? So the moment you have men that have the ability to think, that doesn't happen. But then on a general scale, these are exceptional cases, but on a general scale, it does not take away any truth behind the saying, how you dress is how you're going to be addressed. It doesn't take away from it, right? You can talk about all the exceptional cases as much as you want, but then it's not going to change the fact that this is a truth. It's the same way we know what the law is, and we're still going to break it regardless. I mean, but that, for example, in India, we're told do not drink. How many people do you know that drink? Okay, right? So if you know, like there's a lot of people that drink, and I'm not talking about Africans, I'm talking about Africans and Indians. There's a lot of Indian. I actually told them in my class one day that I feel like a lot of your restrictions are based on your economic class. The higher you are up, the less the laws apply to you. Because I know Indians that drink. I personally don't, but I know them, right? So it's now a situation of the law is there, but does it take away anything from the law? No, the law is still a standard, but the people are still going to act up.
Okay. All right. So, mentally is going to ask you a question.
Huh.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
You're going to respond to those two questions at once.
Let's try and see how that goes.
Okay, so the first one is, what does emotional numbness feel like, and how can someone begin to heal from it when they feel disconnected from their emotions?
The second one is how does parental favoritism shape sibling dynamics and individual self-worth, and can those wounds ever truly heal?
Are these two separate questions though?
Yeah, they are separate, but they are also kind of linked.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people have this very great emphasis on IQ. Very few people talk about EQ, right? So there is intelligence, like head ones, then you have emotional intelligence. And the problem is we do not have enough people that are emotionally intelligent, and that is why we have such an unstable society. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when I came, I was to India specifically, I was brutally honest. Okay. And it was a situation whereby my friends themselves knew, never ask Peter to come and sign your attendance for you. like that's the height of where I was operating from. And along the way, some of my friends spoke to me and were like, with the way you are, as good as it might be, you're not gonna get far with people. And unfortunately, it was the truth. A lot of people do not enjoy truth. But the problem is there wasn't a limit to what was said. Because what I got from what was said is that I need to take off my character and create a character that is acceptable to society. But the problem with that is the moment you lose connection with your true self, you lose connection to your emotions. Because your emotions and whatnot are all connected to your original person. This is where the iffy part of it is, right? So if I heard something different back then, such as you're too brutally honest, you need to find a way to bring people into the truth without having to offend them, right? And this is what people now find annoying about me, is that if I'm trying to explain a point to you, I'm never going to go directly to the point. I will go round. And the reason why I'm going round is because I'm telling you different stories and different things, so that by the time I'm getting to the place where I'm supposed to express the point, you should have understood the point. So I don't longer, like, you know, it's one thing if I tell you, don't touch the fire or the flame. As a kid, you want to touch the flame. It's so pretty. Yeah. Go put your hand on it. That's a different story, right? And then your parent have a specific way they're going to do this. They're going to beat you up, most likely, or they're just going to rebuke you. But beating me up means you have given me more fear of you than the issue. Then there's the problem with the understanding is off. Because the actual reality of it is supposed to be, allow me to go touch that fire. The moment I feel that pain, and then for the next few days, that pain is there to remind me as to what caused it, I will never touch that fire again. And this is where the problem of too much restriction come in. I understand that you want to protect, but the problem is, if the person fears you more than the issue, it's going to create a situation of what a lot of people in India have experienced, whereby you came from very restrictive homes, you came to India and exploded. Now, all the things you were not allowed to do, you do, it's one thing to do them, but you do it excessively now. Because you have not yet understood why they told you not to go down the path. You see, this is where the whole thing of knowing where the limits are. So what that did to me, that advice, what it did to me is that it put me in a position whereby, because now I was being told, do not make yourself accessible to people. You don't need to be listening to people's stories and whatnot and whatnot. And I'm like, okay. And the moment I did that, for a period of time, I felt an emptiness. Now, this is where that emotional numbness comes in, because there's a disconnect between you and who you're supposed to be. Now, I understand that my brutal honesty was a defect in a certain way, because even the honesty, there's a certain limit it should be within. There's an acceptable limit. Now, what should have happened was that I was supposed to bring my honesty within the limit. But the problem is, I only saw it as it's either you're extremely honest or you're not honest at all. And I went down that path. So it made me absolutely numb, because if I was to lie, it would bother me for days.
Okay, so were you like antisocial or?
Not necessarily antisocial, but then I noticed it made me become way more manipulative. Because now I've come to a place whereby I've understood that I need to take away my character and create a pseudo character that I can function within society. And from what I saw in society, everybody was manipulating everybody. So now it was now a situation of I had to be the best at that, right? So it put me in a state of disconnect after a period of time. And for I think a couple of months after that happened, I went into a depression. People did not know that. People around me did not know that. But I was deep inside depression. And how I now started noticing it was that I now started kind of like reading books and coming across different podcasts. And one of the things I noticed there, they said if your room is a mess continuously, it's most likely going to be a reflection of your mental headspace. Because when your head is organized, everything around you is going to be organized. You're going to want your life to have a certain order. Unless, of course, you're naturally dirty. That's a different conversation. But when you're a person like me, that like I've spoken to you about time before. I mean, the podcast was by 7:30. I made sure I left my house by 6. I like order. And the moment, like, if you can ask my friend like Theo, he will tell you that one of the reasons we fought the most was because he would tell me he'll be here by this time and he was not there by that time.
Do you still fight with him?
Concerning that, no. I just came to a place whereby I just accepted that's how he is. So it's a situation whereby, cool. Now I have an understanding that something is wrong. There's a disconnect somewhere. So I kind of like started trying to retrace my steps. Okay, this is where it started. What caused it? Now I started connecting it to your original character was taken away. You put it away from yourself, which now led to this disconnect. So your emotions are not aligned. You're not as sensitive as you used to be because now you're okay with lies. Like you don't react to it as much as you used to. Now you have the ability to manipulate people, etc., etc. And these are things that made you uncomfortable. But now it's something that you can practice. So I had to kind of like retrace and started trying to find my way back to the original state. But then understanding that when I get to that original state, I need to make certain modifications. So instead of telling you, oh, you're ugly today, or you're dressed badly today, I can tell you like, yo, I don't think the colors are matching. Now you see, I could tell you that you're dressed poorly today, but that's the end result. But if I take a different approach of, okay, I don't think your jeans are matching your top. Don't you want to change that a bit? Because I think people are going to make fun of you. Now, I've gotten to the point either way, but the difference is one was going to lead to a fight, the other would not. So I now understood that there are certain modifications I would have to make in order to like go with it. And a lot of people have done the same thing. A lot of people have disconnected themselves from their original self. And now you're going to parties, you're drinking, you're smoking, all things that you naturally would not have done, but then you got influenced by other people and you thought this was the cool thing to do. And because you started practicing it, you disconnected from your original self, which leads you into a place whereby recently, last year, ending of last year, a friend of mine was like, oh, I'm going to quit alcohol. Throughout the call with her, I just kept laughing. And then she was like, oh no, I'm serious. I'm like, cool. Then birthday came. Alcohol entered the group chat. Posted on her story. I called her like, yo, what's up with the alcohol? She was like, this happened and this happened. And then this year, she now says very brazenly to me, yeah, I've just settled with the fact that I'm an alcoholic. And I'm like, yeah, I figured, because I don't think you came to that particular realization in the proper way. It was a situation whereby she went to a chill, and from that drunken state, she felt horrible the next day. So it was from that place of regret that decision was made. You can't make a decision from a place of regret. You make a decision from a place of an understanding. There's an understanding of what's supposed to happen. So it's not impossible for her to stop it. She can't stop it, right? But then now, there's a lot of things now that kind of like influence it, including the kind of people you hang around with, right? And if you notice, there's now people that cannot do without the smoking or the drinking. And the reason they can't do without it is that in as much as they want to cover it up as a chill, and they themselves might not realize it, it's coming from a place of emotional emptiness. So you need an escape, which is what the highness does, eh? This is where people need to put on their big boy and big girl pants, right? Because when I was in high school, I was part of a preaching sect. So it was like mobile evangelical group, right? And we were parading ourselves like Christians. Now, one of our pastors said to us before we left, this was like when we were graduating. So he said to us, not a single one of you here is Christian. This is what he said to us. And I'll never forget it. That is one thing. What he said that day is something that stuck with me for all these years. And what he said actually came true. That's the funny thing, yeah. He said very clearly, the reason you are in a comfort place to call yourself a Christian is because you are within the four walls of this missionary school. So it protects you. You haven't come across temptations yet. When you are outside the world and the temptations come in, that's when your Christianity is tested. Until and unless it has been tested, it's nothing to you. It's not even existent. What you have is an emotional attachment to it. But if you fail to uphold the same standard, and I'm saying this because I know that there was some of them that stuck to it till today. And there are many that fell along the way. And this is where the whole thing of morality comes in. You can claim to be moral all you want until you are met with the temptation.
So, Peter, in facing life's harsh realities, where do you personally find hope and strength to keep moving forward?
Goals, I think, goals and values. because I already explained to you how I backtracked to. No, I'm not fully there yet in regards to my original character, but working towards it. And the one thing I've kind of like realized on that particular journey is you need to be able to create your own value system and stick to it, regardless of what is going to happen or who's going to say what. You need to be able to stick to it. This is where character comes in, because character is going to be the defining element of who you are as a person. So if you can set your goals and priorities and whatnot and stick to them, this is what keeps me going. And the thing is, for me, I've tried to reach this point because, for example, most of the trophies or awards I've gotten, you're not going to see them anywhere in my room. They're not physically there. Every single one of them, I've always placed them under my bed. And the reason for that is that it's a representation of what I'm doing in my mind, which is you have not yet achieved anything. You want to be here, and despite all these little wins you're getting here and there, you're not yet where you're supposed to be. So I keep myself hungry for more. Now, based off of that hunger, that is rooted from my goals and virtues and whatever, that is what I kind of like keep running with. Because there's the same thing, people make the mistake between love and feelings. A lot of people think, oh, because I have butterflies for you, I'm in love with you. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. Love is a commitment. It's a choice that you've made to stick by this person. So it has nothing to do with the feelings. The feelings is a byproduct. That is why in the old days, you notice that our parents might get married, yet they never really love themselves. But then along the line, you notice that they become the best of friends and they actually love each other. Why? Because they made that commitment. In the same manner, I've made a commitment to the person I'm trying to be. So based on that commitment, I already understand, because I've made that commitment, I understand what actions I need to take in order to reach that. So when it comes to life's realities, I keep that as my driving force, essentially.
Okay, thank you very much, C. Peter, for your wise words, your wisdom, and your guidance.
Highly doubt it's wisdom, but thank you. We'll see how it goes.
Great, guys. Thank you guys for viewing, tuning in, etc. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on our Instagram page and Facebook page. Don't forget to like and comment as well. And also, just maybe on the next episode, maybe we might dance or something, because we have a Nigerian guest, or we had a Nigerian guest. So we never know. Next time there might be a dance or something.
So you want to experience him again?
Yeah, it's good to have a dancing experience. Yeah. So,
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Okay.
It's okay.
Are we doing the dance?
No?
You said on the next episode.